Hi, everybody. I'm Ken the Metal Professor. Nice to see you, hear you, experience you on the other end of these electronic waves. What the heck am I saying? It is the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program, and you're listening on 103.1 FM WVLP-LP from the rocking metropolis of Valparaiso, Indiana. And every once in a while, Valparaiso has wrestling, not very often, but it's sort of the nexus of a huge spread of wrestling where there's stuff going on all the time. And so being a fan of that kind of stuff, I like to go to lots of shows. And when I started going to shows, it was kind of aggravating and awkward to have to track down a lot of information because it's hard. There's so many groups running, it's hard to keep track. So I decided, you know what? Maybe once in a while I will do something on the radio. And even if nobody's listening, it gives me an excuse to go out there and explore and pull some information together. And it gives me the opportunity to talk about shows I've been to that have been lots of fun and talk about shows that are coming up. So that's what this is about. Every once in a while, there's guests in the studio, and I'll mention some as we go through. Not that I'm name dropping, but just, to draw some connections. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you the rundown of a show that I just went to 2 weeks ago. No, last weekend, actually, August 25th. See, it's September 3rd, and so I have to backtrack in my head. It was last month. Was it really just a week ago? And indeed it was. And then once that's done, I'm going to tell you about a whole bunch of shows coming up soon because it is sort of a wrestling hot season right now because every week except maybe September 30th. I don't know that I see anything for that. But just about every week between now and mid-October, there's a wrestling show within a reasonable driving distance of Valpo. So none of them are in Valpo, but like I said, we're the nexus. Everybody is around us. We are the center of the wrestling universe, and that's pretty exciting. So it's the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program because we're talking about wrestling in Northwest Indiana. I did get to go to this show last Friday. It was a show by the group RCW, Revolution Championship Wrestling, and they run shows in the South Bend area, specifically in Mishawaka recently, at the Battelle Community Center. It's a great place to see a show. No bad seats, except for maybe a row behind a couple of pillars, but I think maybe that's not too much of a problem anyway. But the greatest thing about it is the way it's like a 2 stories open air. And so there's lots of airspace around the ring. Sometimes you go to shows and they're in places where it's in a room with a regular ceiling or a low ceiling, and there's not a lot of room for people to jump around. But here, that's not a problem. So it seems like you're in a bigger space than we might actually be. But it's fun. It's fun to go see shows there. So this was last weekend, last Friday night, and the show was supposed to start at 7 o'clock. And a little bit after 7, more like 7:10 or 7:15 maybe, a pre-show match came out, and this was Fireball versus the Celtic Nightmare. Now, Fireball has been appearing a lot in the northern and kind of north-central, northeastern wrestling scene with FWF, Functified Wrestling, and he's normally a fan favorite, gets the crowd behind him, and this time he came out as the angry heel, which was kind of interesting to watch him play that opposite role in RCW. So he came out, he was angry, he yelled at the crowd. The Celtic Nightmare came out, he got lots of cheers, and he ended up winning that match. And then the main show got underway. Now, there was some history to what was supposed to happen on this show. One of the tag teams involved in this operation is the Midwest Monsters, Tank and Brutus Dillon. Brutus Dillon had an injury last year. He injured his leg, and so he'd been out for quite a while. So he's been working his way back in, and he did a little bit during the last show. And this show is going to be one of his first big return events, and he and Tank were going to take on the Soul Shooters, Drew Skills and Remy Wilkins. And Remy didn't make it, so Drew Skills came out with Officer Rod Street, who is on every show that I've ever seen. And they announced that they would be taking on the Midwest Monsters. So the Midwest Monsters came out, and they had some jabbing back and forth and yapping and yelling at each other just to set the stage for later. And then they got into the first actual match. This was a 6-man mayhem match under what was announced as Lucha Rules, Lucha Libre. And really what that's supposed to mean is in Lucha Rules, when you have a tag team match, Unlike kind of American wrestling, where for one person to enter the ring, the other one has to physically tag them. It's more like, hey, if somebody leaves the ring space, the other person can come right in. So if one person leaves the ring and goes to the floor, the other person has his okay to jump in the ring. So it's a little more flexible in terms of who can be in and out. But there were 6 people in this thing. So what Lucha Rules really meant was that, forget it, there's no rules. We're just going to go all over the place. And that was a lot of fun. Now, with 6 people coming out to the ring and everybody getting their introductions, that was a pretty long production. I would say the intros went on for like at least 10 minutes. But eventually all 6 of these guys were out. It was Noah Walker, the Maltese Tiger, Adam Bueller, Jared Kripke, Steven Drochner, and Roger Lanier. All of these guys show up a lot on these regional shows, and the match was a lot of fun. 6 people diving all over themselves in and out of the ring, and eventually Noah Walker got the win. The next match was Shady Chris Zion against Shane Foster, and Shady, that part of his name tells you everything you need to know about him. He comes out and he says he's the best in the world, he is the reason everybody is here, etc., etc. And he won with a little bit of cheating. He carries a necklace, a heavy chain to the ring, not like a padlock type of chain or a fence chain, but a heavy duty necklace. It's actual jewelry, but it's pretty heavy duty. And he clobbered poor Shane Foster with that necklace while the ref wasn't looking. But the owner of RCW, JB Blackwell, got on the mic after the match and he said he was impressed with Shady's win. He must not have noticed the cheating, and he was rewarding Shady with a shot at the Revolution Championship Wrestling U.S. title at the next event. And that next event is in September, and I'll tell you about that in a little while. Congo Kong is a name people that are fans of wrestling in this area either already know or should know. He's been all over the place on the independent wrestling scene, and now he's active in Global Force Wrestling. He's even on television, so how about that? But he comes back and he does shows in the area, and he took on a gentleman named Douglas Stout, who I'd never seen before. He had a good look. He was tall and pretty agile and had good moves, and he gave Congo a good battle, more so than I expected, because usually Congo makes pretty quick work of his opponents, unless it's a really, really high-profile match. But yeah, this was fun, and eventually Congo Kong did get the win. Let's see. Next up after that was a match for the RCW Tag Team titles. Now, this was Guns and Aggression, who are Mance Warner and Luke Lawson, and they are the champs. And they were taking on Lumber and Lightning, which is the tag team of J.C. Bunyan and Lightning Bolt Johnson. Now, these 2 guys are also, like Fireball, very active in Functified Wrestling out in Warsaw, Indiana. And they also appear lots of other places. But they're fan favorites. Everybody likes them. Although Guns and Aggression have their fan base as well. So this tag team match was pretty good. And at the end of the match, the good guys actually won. So LBJ and J.C. Bunyan got the tag team titles. Everybody was pretty happy, and then after that happened, Mance Warner clobbered his own tag team partner, Luke Lawson, because Luke was the one that got pinned, and Mance said, I don't need him after all, I'm going to break out on my own. And there was lots of booing. Then there was an intermission, and there were snacks. And after intermission, we had a match between Kevin Storm, who holds the RCW US title, and that's the one that Shady Chris Zion will be wrestling for at the next RCW show. He took on Jeremy Hadley. Now, Jeremy is, at least to me, much more familiar in this area at Fire Pro Wrestling, just out there in Merrillville, so he's pretty active locally. He also works a lot. It's kind of south of here in the Lafayette and Indianapolis area, but I haven't seen him go this far east over to the South Bend area before, but there he was, and it was a lot of fun. Anyway, it was a thing, and Kevin Storm retained his title. After the match, though, just to kind of set the stage for next time, after the match, Shady Chris Zion came out and attacked Kevin Storm to let him know what was going to happen next time. At the last RCW show, there was the James Wilson Memorial Tournament. It was a single elimination tournament, and it was won by a gentleman named Caleb Stills. And so he came out, and he reminded us all that he was the winner of this tournament, and that at the next RCW show, he was going to get his chance to win the heavyweight championship from Anthony Toatelli. But in the meantime, he was going to take on the person who used to hold the championship, Jack Thriller. So he figures he can beat both the current champion and the previous champ, and sure enough, he did. Now he had to cheat to do it, because he kind of gave Jack Thriller a low blow while the ref wasn't looking, but he did get that done. So next time it'll be Caleb Stills against Anthony Toatelli for the RCW Heavyweight Championship. And then in the main event, we had that tag team match that was set up earlier, Drew Skills and Officer Rod Street against the Midwest Monsters. The Midwest Monsters are really, really big, and so is Drew Skills. Rod Street is muscular, but he's kind of a normal-sized guy as compared to these other ones. So there was a lot of mass in this ring. So the ring made a lot of noise during this match. But the good guys won, and they win because Officer Rod Street has his crew outside the ring. He's in a group called the Police Department. He often works as a tag team with Deputy Dave. Deputy Dave was not here this time. But he also has Sheriff Eva Lanus on hand, and very often she will hand him something that she shouldn't, such as a can of mace or a little taser. And sometimes that doesn't go as well as planned, and in this case, that's what happened because Rod Street ended up getting zapped by his own taser, and he got pinned. And everybody was happy, and everybody went home after a good show. So that was Revolution Championship Wrestling, and it's fun for me to think about the show again and go through some names because those names show up quite a lot. So let's look ahead. Here's what's coming up in this area over the next several weeks. And this is a, well, I was going to say a mouthful. It's like a calendar full, because if you are into this stuff like I am, you could be putting some miles on your car and gas in the tank and cash for tickets and snacks and maybe even a t-shirt or something like that here or there. But here we go. Let's get this thing started. Saturday, September 9th, that's next weekend, ARW Pro, Adrenaline Ringside Wrestling, will be doing a show at Edison High School in Lake Station. Now, ARW Pro, I believe I can say, are friends of the show here on the Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program. Joey Boom Boom, who's the main promoter, he's been in here twice. King Bishop, who is the storyline owner, and he's been a manager for some of the wrestlers. He's been in here a couple of times, and the last time they all visited to promote a different show, they brought in Max Holiday, the current ARW Pro champ, and we all had a good time. So I like to go to their shows, and they like to come to the station, and it's a good thing. I am officially making my official apology to ARW Pro that I will be missing yet another show of theirs. So next week, if you heard Mostly Metal right before this, you know what's going on. It's an annual music festival called Prog Power USA. I will be down there for that show. And I will be missing this show on September 9th. And this will be like the third ARW Pro show in a row that I haven't been able to get to. But October, I'm hoping for the best. But we'll see. But anyway, RW Pro, they run in Lake Station once a month, generally the second Saturday of every month, or maybe it's either the second or third Saturday. It's pretty predictable. This one happens to be the second Saturday. They often run out of the American Legion in Lake Station, but this time they're going to a high school, and generally that means it's a fundraiser for either just generally that school or one of the clubs or something like that. So it'll be for a good cause. Showtime is 7:30 Central. So hey, that's like 40 minutes from here tops. So it's an easy trip for a good night of wrestling. The weekend after that, you can actually do double duty at 3 o'clock. And this is Eastern time, so 2 o'clock for us. New Dawn Pro Wrestling will be running a show at Apple Road Theater in Osceola, Indiana. And then that night at 7 o'clock Eastern, so 6 o'clock for us, is the follow-up Revolution Championship Wrestling RCW show. This is called Revolution Rumble, and it again will be at the Battelle Community Center. And so as I was doing the rundown of the show from last week, I was picking up on some matches that had been announced for this coming show, and the ones I know about will be Shady Chris Zion versus Kevin Storm for the RCW US title, Caleb Stills versus Anthony Toatelli for the RCW Heavyweight title, and this show is called Revolution Rumble because there's going to be a 30-man Battle Royal, a 30-man Revolution Rumble, and the winner of this Rumble will get a shot at the heavyweight title somewhere down the line. So that should be a lot of fun. Big rumbles like that, battle royals, they're always fun. So again, that's Saturday, September 16th. You can go to the show at Osceola, 3 o'clock Eastern, and then head for Mishawaka by 7 o'clock Eastern for the RCW show. And I'm wondering if some people will be on both shows, and that's why they've arranged it. So one's an afternoon show and one's an evening show. But that'll be a good day. Then the weekend after that, Saturday, September 23rd, we come back to this part of the state and we go to Crown Point, where Black Label Pro, a new promotion, will be doing the Darkest Timeline Championship Tournament, Phase 1. And I know there's a follow-up show sometime in October, which I'm guessing is Phase 2. This will be a show that will, maybe they'll feature some local talent, but they're also bringing in some people from outside. I don't have that roster right now. And one of the reasons I don't is that we'll hear it right from the source, because not next Sunday, but on Sunday the 17th, the main promoter of Black Label Pro, Michael Blanton, will be in the studio, and he will talk to us about how he got this promotion started and what things we can look forward to on that show on the 23rd. And that's an afternoon show, 1 o'clock, and it might even be an outdoor show. It's a place called On the Square Sports Academy. That's where it is. So if it's not outdoors, it's downtown on the square, in one of the facilities nearby there. But that's Saturday, September 23rd. Also on Saturday, September 23rd at 7 o'clock at night is EHF Extreme Homecoming 2 at the Century Center in South Bend, Indiana. Now, EHF is relatively new. They're becoming more active in the South Bend area, up to Niles, Michigan, which is it's kind of in the South Bend vicinity right across the border in Michigan. This show is stacked, and they've actually released the entire list. So here we go. There will be a 6-man scramble featuring All-American Psycho versus Bam Grizzly versus Colt Daniels versus Travis Trendbetter versus Wyrick versus J-Dog. I haven't heard of any of those guys, so I will look forward to seeing them. Bazooka versus Tigre Asiatico. And then we'll have a fatal 4-way tag team match. Pretty Marvelous and Striking versus the Spirit of Detroit versus the Cardia Brothers, Fat Tony and Rick versus the Natural Aces. There's an open challenge. Samson White will take on somebody. We don't know. It's an open challenge, but somebody will meet it. A triple threat match between, here's some familiar names, Noah Walker versus Cameron versus Lightning Bolt Johnson. 2 of those guys were on the recent RCW show. There will be a handicap match with a special referee, Johnny Lovely. The Deadly Alliance versus Tony Thunder. So this is a 2-on-1 match with a special ref. I'm curious I don't know the storyline there, but it's got to be something interesting. Jaden Quick and Theo Storm versus the Saints. A triple threat women's match. Eva Lannis of the Police Department versus Shayla Hyde versus Haley Shadows. Mr. Fitness versus Ox Baker Jr. Now, I'm getting tired just reading all these matches. Imagine how long the show is going to be. Should be good stuff. A triple threat #1 contenders elimination match. D.W. Kelly versus Fireball, there he is, versus Ames. Ames is very active around here. You'll see his name a lot. Now, here's one I'm interested in seeing, just wondering what it is. A hardcore. Now, when I stopped there, well, first of all, you probably think of stuff you shouldn't think about. But in wrestling, hardcore is usually a hardcore match, which means things like tables and chairs and weapons will be allowed, and it's usually pretty brutal. I don't think this is a match. This is a hardcore verbal debate between Adam Nielsen and Johnny Lovely. Johnny Lovely is one of the managers, and he's also that special ref in the other match. So maybe it'll be like Trump and Clinton doing a debate. Who knows? The EHF World Championship match, Robbie E. versus Sedan. And the EHF United States Championship will be Shane Mercer versus the Celtic Nightmare. So that's Saturday, September 23rd. So not only can you do double duty on the 16th by going to see New Dawn Pro Wrestling at 3 Eastern and then Revolution Championship Wrestling at 7 Eastern. On Saturday the 23rd, you can go to Crown Point to see a show at 1 o'clock Central and then head for South Bend to see the EHF show at 7 o'clock Eastern or 6 p.m. Central. That would be a long day. Whew. I'm not sure. I'll probably try the double duty on the 16th. Not so sure about the 23rd. I may have to pick one because that would be a long day. So Saturday, September 30th, I haven't spotted anything there unless I've missed something obvious. So we get a break. But then after that, Saturday, October 7th, Pro Wrestling King, they are very active. They have shows, sometimes more than one show a month. They're doing Halloween Mania 4 out at the Bourbon Park Pavilion in Bourbon, Indiana. That's an easy drive from here. You just go out Route 30, less than an hour away, or maybe like almost exactly an hour. But it's really easy. Bourbon looks like a nice town. It's fun to go there. Saturday, October 14th is a new promotion in this area. We're back here in Griffith, so getting closer to Valpo. 6 p.m. Central, Backbreaker Wrestling has Mega Clash, and that's going to be at the St. Mary Hildebrandt Hall in Griffith, Indiana. There are some other things in October, like I think there will be another RCW show. There's another Black Label Pro show, and I've failed you by not having the specific details of those. But now we're getting to be a month and a half out, so we'll get those details in soon. But I just wanted to point out that in November, Saturday, November 11th, Pro Wrestling King, already mentioned, EHF, already mentioned, and POG, Price of Glory Wrestling, who operates out of southern Michigan. They're combining for a big event called Stack the Deck. This will be at the Century Center in South Bend, Indiana. And old school fans might like to know that Jake the Snake Roberts will be on hand at this event, as well as Crazy Steve, Joey Ryan, and Shark Boy. So this isn't just like a regular, local show with all the local guys. This will be a lot of local guys and also some bigger names being brought in. So that big long list was what's coming up soon. Now, it's a lot of information. And like I said at the start, one of the reasons I started doing this was because I needed a good excuse. I mean, I had an excuse for myself to go out and try to collect and keep track of all this information, but it's more fun if you can share it with other people that might find it useful. So just listening to me yap about it isn't really going to do you much good, because I'm imagining folks out there are not recording this, and you probably don't have a notepad at hand. So how the heck can you go recover all this? Well, you can do like I do and go searching all over the place on Facebook and click likes on lots and lots of pages to start following them. But I've done a lot of the legwork already. Ta-da! So, hey, you know what? I'm going to do that. I have done a lot of the legwork already. There we go. I knew that sound effect would come in handy once in a while. And so you can go to metalprofessor.com. Metal Professor, spelled just like you would think so, .com. There's different stuff there, but one of the menu items is NWIWRAP, NWIWRAP, Northwest Indiana Wrestling Action Program. And one of the tabs there is shows in 2017. And you can read this list. And in fact, all I did was print that page. And that's all the stuff that I read you. And if you want a little bit more immediate feedback and reminders of where things are, my contact information for this show is nwiwrap.wvlp. So nwiwrap.wvlp at gmail.com. And I'm giving you that not so you're welcome to write me and tell me to shut up or, whatever you need to do. But I have a calendar that's open to the public associated with that website, and I put all this stuff in the calendar too. And so you can subscribe to that calendar and get notifications and make your phone drive you nuts and remind you about these things when it's too late to actually go. But you can also look them up ahead of time and try to make your plans appropriately. So that's the story. I gave you the rundown of what's happened last week at RCW. A lot of those events fed into this show coming up soon on Saturday, September 16th. The moral of this story is there's tons of stuff going on, so if you're a fan of wrestling like I am, there's no reason not to be going out to some of these shows. Support those independent feds, support those local guys. Tickets are usually like $10 a piece for 3 hours of wrestling. Hot dogs for a couple of bucks. You get to meet them. They're always accessible, especially during intermission. It's a lot of fun. And a lot of these are family-friendly shows, so don't hesitate to bring the kids. If you let them watch TV, this isn't going to be any worse. Now, if you are interested in wrestling and you don't want to get out to these local shows, and maybe the big wrestling names, WWE, and maybe Global Force Wrestling, but what are some of your other options? What are things that I can recommend? Well, let me just mention a few things here. So if you have a couple of these, you would have to have the WWE Network. But if you're looking to fill your hours of the day with wrestling, the WWE Network is a good thing to check out. And right now they're showing weekly shows are NXT and 205 Live. NXT is their developmental brand, so you get to see people who will later be on the big stage. And these shows are a lot of fun and very often better than the actual main shows. And they also have a show called 205 Live, which is the Cruiserweight show, which comes on Tuesday evenings. And you can always pull it up on demand anytime. And it's the smaller guys, the cruiserweights, that do a lot more of the acrobatic flippy stuff in their show. And so if you like that kind of thing, it can be very entertaining. And so I would recommend those. Currently, the network also dropped something called the Mae Young Classic. Now, this isn't an ongoing wrestling show. It's, I believe it's 4 episodes, maybe 3. I haven't watched it myself, but I know it just came out recently, where they had a women's tournament, a single elimination tournament to crown the winner of the Mae Young Memorial Classic. And so now that's available to watch. So you can watch the entirety of that tournament all the way through. NJPW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, they have a website that you can subscribe to, so you can watch all of their shows with English commentary. And Ring of Honor also has a strong web presence, so you can check them out too. And Lucha Underground, I think there's mixed opinions on Lucha Underground because it's definitely different. The wrestling itself is lucha. It's lucha libre, so it's a little bit of a different style, and you have to get used to it. But it's also it can be very exciting. Lots of diving out of the ring and flips and high impact moves and things like that. And it's done more of as an actual TV drama. So when you watch WWE, I've heard it described, and it's accurate, as it's a show about a wrestling show. This Lucha Underground is just the wrestling show, so it's presented kind of de facto. They have behind the scenes, sketches and skits that the performers are in. But what's interesting is that the announcers and the audience aren't aware of what's been going on in those behind the scenes things. The audience on TV has, but the other folks haven't. And so that's interesting. So that's on, good grief, now I'm drawing a blank, because I subscribe to it on iTunes and I watch it that way. It's on the El Rey Network. So if you have cable and you can get the El Rey Network, you can check that out. So either through local independent wrestling shows, which are happening almost every weekend for the foreseeable future, or checking into different things online, on television. If you are a wrestling fan, have been a wrestling fan, think you might be a wrestling fan, there is no reason why you aren't spending many, many hours of your week on wrestling. I spend too many hours a week on wrestling, but at least if it's something on television, I can pretend I'm doing other things at the same time, right? Yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So anyway, thanks for listening. I hope that rundown did you some good if you're looking for things to do. I'm Ken the Metal Professor. You are listening to WVLP, Low Power FM from Valparaiso, Indiana at 103.1 FM. And I'm going to have to talk and click on computers at the same time, so we're going to check my coordination here. But I'm about to turn on other programming. After me, you'll hear a station ID, and then you will hear the show Punk Rock Radio. Next week, I will be in Atlanta. There will be a Mostly Metal from 8 to 10. It'll be pre-recorded, but it won't be a show you've already heard. I'm going to record it specifically for next week, so it'll be just like I'm here with you, even though I won't be. So I will be back live on the 17th. And again, Michael Blanton from Black Label Pro Wrestling will be here to talk about their show in Crown Point coming up on the 23rd. And away we go.